News, views, voices of the global Indian community. India abroad.
I was having so much trouble talking to Quincy about what my parents might think of me dating him, my own sort of um, talking to my parents about him, um, breaking the news to them that I was dating him, uh, and the fallout from that. I kept that away from Quincy. I just wanted to protect him from
Mhm.
that conversation, and the and I think I was still struggling with the trauma of having those um, conversations with my family. That it there is still so much anti-blackness. There was and is still so much anti-blackness in South Asian America, that Afro-Asian dating is uh, radical. The book sort of tells the story, right?
Right.
It thinks about how uh, I sort of chart the struggle of telling my parents about Quincy, and both dealing with their initial response to him was anti-black, and it was like just very traumatic in a way of, you know, don't date this guy.
Right.
Um, but at the same time, um, people are full of contradictions, and
Mhm.
I really just wanted to tell a story where um, a lot of people were just human beings with each other.
Right.
Um, and that was the most important thing to me, that um, these difficult conversations that we have with our family about race, about, you know, interracial solidarity, interracial love, um, those conversations are hard, and you come up against opposing opinions, but we shouldn't be ashamed of having them or that they exist in our life.
Mhm.
That's kind of what I want, why I wanted to write this story, is like put all that experience that I had, that really rough experience of like breaking it to my family and just feeling like I got like a negative response from them. I wanted to put it out there because I didn't want it to feel like, no, like a something forbidden. I think that
Absolutely.
you can have those experiences, and even I'd say like you can create characters that are complicated, and people can still root for those characters. I think um, you can see um, I you you can see. I hope that I wrote the characters of my mother and father. They're not characters, but like, you know, they're real people. But I hope I
Absolutely.
depicted them in a way that showed them as human as anyone else. And in that way, I hope it makes having these conversations feel more possible for people, and more like we can talk to each other about having these conversations with our families,
Mhm.
because we are not alone in having these complicated but loving bonds um, with each other.
When you first brought Quincy home, your mother welcomed him with the traditional tika. And that is such a traditional way of bringing somebody into the family. And she did that, and then made a bag of shawls that you could take to Quincy's family, and sort of typical traditional mom things, even given her reservations. Did she ever talk to you about that? About wanting to create that semblance of normalcy amid, what she possibly conceived to be a very abnormal situation?
I think that I don't know if she was trying to create normalcy as much as uh, there was an urge to her. There was like an urge to her to welcome him as much as there's an urge in her that like came from like the old adage, what will people think, to
Right.
make him persona non grata, but there was an equal urge to welcome him. And I think like I'm I think that like our journey together as a family um was was kind of questioning or working through together where that other urge, the no, because what will people think, um, anti-blackness comes from, and really to then think about what it means to um, pursue this other feeling, pursue another set of actions. Like I want to put Dika on Quincy's forehead. I want to call him Beta. Like those things I think came as natural to her. These structures of racism that keep us apart. It's like you're never getting it right. Like there's no like right or wrong. It's an ongoing act, an ongoing process of discovery. Moving towards something that is like removing those boundaries of stereotypes, those boundaries of settler colonialism, to get to something that is more true, that is more already there. And I think that's where we were going as a family, like to get to like what's there when you pull apart those structures that keep us apart. I worked on this book, and it was most important to me was like to create moments that were like ordinary alongside the extraordinary moments, like the moments that are just like couples, like when am I going to meet your mom, huh?
Right.
Like those kind of things. I
Right.
wanted them to lay side by side with like, now it's a global pandemic and we're watching George Floyd getting murdered on TV. I wanted both those things. I often think that like black and brown stories really get just like one story.
Mhm.
They don't get both. They don't get something more complicated. And I just wanted um, the ordinary and the extraordinary. I think we're just like a family now. Yeah, my both sets of my parents, our parents are coming to. I have a book talk tomorrow, and
Oh,
that'll be really
fantastic.
exciting. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it's nice.
Yeah.
They have a lot in common too. They're both like Jersey people, and it's just, yeah, it's great. It's funny to see how people come together. Anti-blackness is baked into the process of Asian Americans assimilating. I think, again, like to go back to like the model minority myth, it's part of the way that uh, we're supposed to not make trouble, is to thinking about like the model minority myth coming out of like the civil rights movement, right? It was
Mhm.
a way of making black people advocating for civil rights, saying like they are problem minorities, for and like the model minority is someone who's quiet and just upholds the bootstrap myth, right?
Right. Right.
So I think like, part of assimilation is keeping yourself apart, is like upholding that like docile, I'm not going to make trouble and I'm not going to be like them, and I think it's not enough to declare like I'm anti-racist, I'm like in solidarity. You gotta do the work both with yourself and have those tough conversations, and also like think about the like where that comes from. And I mean that in like the most human ways. Like what are the histories that precede us, that have hurt us, that scare us,
Mhm.
that inform our behaviors. And I think that's a way into healing and into something better, a better future.
In the book, you also talk about your struggles with mental health, which is rare. Was it a struggle for you to bring that into your essays?
I still had a lot of reservations about writing about it. And eventually, in my very last semester of my MFA program, where I was writing a ton of memoir and never wrote about my mental health, I talked to my thesis advisor teacher, this wonderful writer. Her name is Margot Jefferson. She wrote two incredible essay collections, memoir and essays that I would recommend. Negro Land and Constructing a Nervous System, and then her cultural criticism book on Michael Jackson. But I remember just telling her I'd like have so much trouble writing about mental health, or I think the words kind of stumbled out of my mouth. And I was like, but I want to. And she said, Nina, do you remember ever experiencing any pleasure during that time period? And all of a sudden, I remembered pulling out a fuchsia dress during a manic episode and putting it on. And I remembered the texture and the color and just the act of doing that. And I finally was able to write this story about my mental health that was less about me trying to write a mental health story and more about I was actually just like writing towards this moment of putting on this dress.
Right.
And I think the difference is that, remembering, like, do you remember any pleasure? And I recalled this memory. It made me realize that you could approach writing about mental health, like almost like, not to romanticize this, but almost like how people write drug narratives.
Right.
And not like in a way of like, cool. I just mean like you're writing about any other kind of altered state.
Yeah.
And doing that, like, just, like blew my mind. I was able to, like, instead of writing from a place of stigma and shame, I was able to write things with like sensory detail, rich sensory detail, be playful with sight, sounds, colors, touch, memories. And it just made me actually depict these moments in my life, these hard moments, with more depth and accuracy.
And are you in Quincy, final question, are you in Quincy living the jazz life, or?
Someone else just asked me about that today. He will never live this term down. This is like, I think so. How do you define jazz
I
life?
have no idea. I was hoping you would.
This is like harder than putting relativity and string theory together, I think, is defining jazz lifestyle. So
I imagine it maybe just being riffs, like there's a solid core, and then, as in jazz, right? People that come and go and they play their bit and then they go, right? And then you continue on with that core.
I love that. I think that's lovely. I feel like I'm gonna go with that. That's today's definition of jazz lifestyle. I mean, I guess we like riff together. Like, for an example of that is, I think we've committed to a certain life together, and a life that is like two artists living and loving and making things together. And a lot of like every step is like, I'm gonna try this. I don't know how it's gonna go, and the other person is like, yes, no, you have to try it. So I think those are the riffs, and yeah. This is great. I think we're figuring it out together.